So after the events of Breaking Bad, Saul takes a new identity as Gene, working behind the counter at a shopping mall, 7 located in Omaha. He becomes tense when a customer seems to be staring at him, but is instantly relieved when the man passes by him to greet a friend. Later inside a modest apartment, Gene pours himself a glass of liquor and watches TV, flipping through channels. He then searches around a VHS inside a shoebox, which plays his TV ads from back in the day when he was still a lawyer. Gene weeps, heartbroken at the reminder of the man he used to be and can never be again. At the end of another workday, Gene sees off his co-workers before he takes out the garbage. In the garbage room, the door, only being able to open from the outside, shuts, locking Gene inside while he throws the garbage in the dumpster. Gene calls out for anyone for several minutes until he considers using the emergency exit. However, opening the door will trigger an alarm and alert the police, who could potentially recognize him. Still paranoid, Gene resumes kicking and yelling for someone to open the door. After several attempts, Gene sits against the wall and finds a rusty nail. A couple hours later, someone finally opens the door and Gene walks out right past him. On the wall, Gene has carved the message, "SH was here." As we know, this is Saul Goodman, the identity that he will always have. During another workday, Gene takes a lunch break on the second floor of the mall. He sees a young man ducking out into a photo booth. Gene noticed a couple of DVD cases falling from the bully's coat and immediately realized the kid has been shoplifting. When a security guard and police officer arrive pursuing the kid, they ask Gene if he has seen him. Gene nods in the direction of the photo booth, watching helplessly as the kid is pulled out and arrested. Gene's whole instinct flare up and he suddenly shoves out the boy to say nothing and hire a lawyer. Realizing he has acted out of character, Gene returns to the Cinnabon and begins prepping more food before the shock overwhelms him and he passes out. After passing out, Gene is taken to the hospital where he undergoes tests to determine the cause of his collapse and if it was a heart attack. While at the hospital, Gene grows nervous at the sight of police officers nearby and his heart rate increases. But is visited by a doctor who confirms that it was not a heart attack and aside from a slightly elevated blood pressure. Everything comes back as normal, and on his way out, the nurse at the desk asks for another look at his driver's license. Due to the computer kicking the driver's license back, she requests Gene's social security number, and Gene grows more and more fearful of being discovered as time goes on. Fortunately, the nurse determines that she kept making a simple typo, and Gene is able to leave. Breathing heavily, Gene has a taxi take him back to the mall and spots an air refreshener marked Albuquerque Isotopes in the rear view mirror, and the taxi driver appears to be staring at him as if he recognized him. When the driver takes too long at the green light, and paranoid Gene decides to get out of the taxi early and heads towards the church. Noticing that the taxi has not moved since he left it, Gene returns to his car and the now closed mall parking lot and goes home. Panicked, Gene empties a container of diamonds. He makes a call, changing his license plate to Missouri plates, and drives off listening to a police scanner. At a truck stop diner, Gene refuses. A waitress offers up food and calls Molly to let her know that he's fine and won't be back until Thursday. Gene questions if anyone has been looking for him or hanging around and brushes off all his concerns. Gene is relieved to find out that no one is looking for him and spent the next few days hiding in his house, listening to the police scanner, and keeping watch while drinking. Now, convinced that no one is looking for him, Gene returns to work. While on break, he's approached by Jeff, the cab driver who ecstatically recognized him as Saul Goodman. Gene insists that Jeff, who was another man with him, has getting him mixed up with someone else. But Jeff insists that they both know who Gene really is and pressures Jim to admit who really is. Nervously looking at some nearby cops, Gene does his Better Call Saul catchphrase, and Jeff introduces himself and states that if Gene ever needs a ride, to call the cab company and ask for him. After Jeff and his friend leave, Gene calls Ed from a payphone for another extraction. Ed recognizes Gene and warns him that it will be difficult and it's double the price. Gene admits that he got made through there's no official involvement and promises that he has the money. Ed states that the pickup will be in the same place that he got dropped off Thursday at 7 a.m. and Gene remembers the location. However, after a moment of consideration, Gene changes his mind and decides to fix it himself before hanging up and walking away. Now that is how season 5 begins. Let's see how season 6 will begin. I cannot wait to see what's gonna happen. But I decided to do a story on Better Call Saul, the complete Gene story. What are your thoughts? Leave in the comments below. My name is Christian from Beyond Premiere, and I will see you in the next one. Bye bye, everyone.